much more power. But have we also restricted our children's freedom?
I remember in the summer holidays I would go out to play with my friends and just come home when I was hungry, and I'd give Mum a vague idea where I was likely to be.
My children had less freedom than they had when I was younger. When I was younger, I used to go off with my friend, on a bike ride and not come back all day.
In the past, childhood was an adventure where we discovered our independence. In the classic children's stories, Swallows and Amazons, 4 kids beg their parents to let them take the holiday of a lifetime, all alone.
Dispatches? Telegram from Daddy. Mum will set me straight up with it.
It's the answer to our letter. He says, better drowned than duffers. If not, duffers won't drown.
All we wanted to know was if he'd let us sail the boat to the island and camp there. It's a riddle, but I think it means yes.
So do I.
Hooray for Daddy!
We live in an age these days where you can't even send your kid down the street on their bike without jamming a helmet on their head. It seems extraordinary that a mum and dad would be happy to allow their 4 kids all on their own to sail to an island and camp on it for a week.
Nearly there! Nearly there! Nearly there!
Even the simplest freedoms, the things we as children took for granted, have been throttled in this safety-first culture. We don't just want to wrap them in cotton wool, we want to constantly watch over them.
By the time the child is 5, by the beginning of school days, she has gone a long way. It seems now as if she has taken a sudden leap forward.
I used to love walking to school alone. I love the freedom and I love the independence that it brought. And in the early 1970s, I was pretty typical. Then 8 out of 10 children, aged 7 or 8 years old, used to walk to school on their own. But that is a figure that has altered dramatically. Now, for school kids aged 11, only 50% of them are allowed to walk to school alone.
Part of that, of course, is that there's just more traffic around. Yet we also fear they're more vulnerable to strangers. But we didn't become this obsessive overnight. From the 1960s onwards, we've gradually traded our children's independence in return for the belief that they're safer.
Charlie says that if ever you see a box of matches lying around, tell Mummy because they can hurt you.
In the 60s and 70s, the state began to involve itself in the everyday aspects of family life. This campaign was called Charlie Says. I clearly remember it. It was run in 1973. I was around about 5. I have to say, it scared the hell out of me.
You have to tell her things like not to talk to strangers, that somebody...
At first, these films chimed a note of caution in an otherwise friendly world.
Hey, what do you think you're playing at? That's no way to cross the road, is it?
Accidental deaths were reduced. But as time passed, we seemed to begin to fixate on the idea that round every corner lurked a danger. And perhaps concerns for child safety began to be driven by our adult paranoia.
Would you like to get in my car? Mummy sent me to fetch you.
You can also see, from a very simple experiment, why safety services in playgrounds make such a difference. If I drop a plate on the studio floor, this is what happens.
In the 1980s and early 90s, fearful parents found a formidable ally, Esther Ranson. Esther headed several campaigns to keep kids safer, but it was Childline, aimed at abused children, which had the most enduring legacy.
Childline.
When
Childline opened, children were talking to us about sexual abuse that had been going on 10 to 15 years, all their lives. I remember a woman saying that she'd written about it in an essay to a teacher she really trusted, and the teacher had put a line through the whole essay and written at the bottom, "This is disgusting stuff, I never want to read anything like this again." So there was a whole society in denial, if you like, in disbelief, because those children had never been given permission to ask for help.
Do you think you and the programmes that you're responsible for making bear any responsibility towards this more paranoid, fearful attitude that people have now when it comes to being a parent?
Yes, I do think it contributed to it, and I think it's a huge pity, and I don't know how we could have brought to the public's attention that respectable homes sometimes were places of torture for children, because it's really important that people recognise that you can't tell a child abuser by social class or appearance. They don't have horns. But how you alert the public to that without making them feel that every adult is a potential child abuser, I do not know.
Police in Portugal are searching for a 3-year-old British girl who's thought...
Sussex have confirmed that the body of a young girl found yesterday is that of 8-year-old Sarah.
Police hunting for the missing 10-year-old girls, Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, have found 2 bodies.
For a parent, can there be anything more chilling than the idea of a predatory stranger?
We're more aware of it now with TV.
There's so much media and coverage about nasty men and paedophiles and who's living next door to you and all these kind of messages.
It's very, very frightening that someone could come into somewhere where your children are and steal them and take them, and you'll never see them again. And that, for me, is very, very, very frightening.
I'm a mum. I've also had those moments of utter terror. Yet I know statistically my fears are misplaced. On average, 11 children are killed by a stranger every year. And since the 1970s, that figure hasn't gone up. Frank Furedi has spoken out about our new safety obsessions. He's a father of 1 son.
I was horrified when my son went to school and the first real lesson that he had was by somebody coming along and talking about stranger danger at the age of 5 or 6. And I felt that was really a sign of adult obsession rather than of the real needs of children.
What about then when something goes wrong? You know, I've probably said it myself, you would hear a parent say, well, if this happens to them, you know, I couldn't live with myself. What does that phrase tell you about a parent's relationship with their child?
Well, it indicates that you're too close emotionally with your child to the point at which you cannot make a distinction between what's in your interest and what's in the child's interest. Because your identity is so closely bound up with your child, it becomes much more difficult to make good judgment calls and objective judgment calls. It's interesting that often, rhetorically, a lot of my friends and other parents say they agree with my ideals, but at the same time, when they see that my son's allowed to take a train on his own or is allowed to go to the park by himself, they get a little bit suspicious and worried.
It sounds to me as though you think there is a sort of mass disorientation within the family going on right now. Would that be fair?
I think so. I think a lot of the problems stem from the fact that they continue being told that being a parent is such a difficult role in life,